Hello everyone, this is yours Trivia, and today we're continuing Sima Zhao's Intent Let's Talk Lore series with episode 2, titled The Fighting Emperor. Before we get started, here's the answer to our trivia question from the end of our last episode, and be sure to stay tuned until the end of this episode for a brand new trivia question. Now last time, we ended as Emperor Cao Mao tried unsuccessfully for the third time to bestow a duke title onto Sima Zhao, and this time, Cao Mao had enough. Therefore, around midnight of June 2nd, 260, roughly a month after the latest failed attempt, Cao Mao summoned the two men he trusted the most inside the imperial palace in Imperial Guard Captain Li Zhao and head eunuch Jiao Bo, and under the protection of Li Zhao's Imperial Palace guards in charge of Ling Yuntai, or the West Palace, Emperor Cao Mao had a secret meeting with three court officials in Wang Shen, Wang Jing, and Wang Ye. Now, despite their shared surnames, these three officials are not at all related, as Wang Shen and Wang Ye were imperial attendants, while Wang Jing was an imperial secretariat secretary. In this meeting, Emperor Cao Mao declared that Sima Zhao's intent to usurp was so clear that even the average pedestrian on the streets of the capital knows, and therefore I have no intentions of sitting idly by to wait for the eventual degrading moment of abdication. Instead, I now ask the three of you for your support in an outright assault on Sima Zhao's estate with the goal of killing this usurper. Hearing this, Wang Jing spoke up first, as he cited a similar event during the Zhou dynasty in the past when King of the Kingdom of Lu tried to overthrow a powerful court official from the Li clan, and in the end, the King of Lu was defeated, forced to flee from his own kingdom, and became the laughingstock of the world. In his opinion, given how entrenched the Sima clan is today compared to how weak the emperor is, a forceful attempt to overthrow Sima Zhao now would only hasten the fall of Wei, and that their best option moving forward was still to wait and hope for opportunities in the future. Now, Wang Jing means well here, as if you don't remember from our past Jiang Wei's Northern Expedition series, Wang Jing was the prefect of the Yong province that had replaced the deceased Guo Huai, and then was immediately soundly defeated by Jiang Wei. After the catastrophe out west, Wang Jing was reassigned back to the imperial court in Luoyang, where he eventually earned the favor of the emperor, which is why he was trusted to be included in this secret meeting. And compared to Wang Jing, who was sharing his earnest thoughts, hoping to help and guide the young emperor, attendants Wang Shen and Wang Ye both remained silent. Seeing that he could not count on these three officials, Cao Mao pulled out the imperial edict that he had already written outlining the crimes of Sima Zhao, as he threw the edict onto the floor in front of the three officials, telling them that his mind was ready set and that this attack on Sima Zhao was going to happen with or without them, as Cao Mao then stormed out of the meeting to head to the Empress Dowager's palace to inform Empress Dowager Guo of the imminent attack. After Cao Mao's departure, Wang Shen and Wang Ye quickly grabbed the edict to race out of the palace to inform Sima Zhao of this attack. On their way out, they tried to grab Wang Jing, as they all knew that if they did not rat out the emperor now, then afterwards, unless Cao Mao successfully kills Sima Zhao, they would all be punished with death as co-conspirators to the attempt. And since they had all already turned the emperor down, that was clearly the outcome that they were all expecting. But at this moment, Wang Jing, who came from a poor farming family in the Ji province, decided to honor his loyalty to the crown, at least symbolically, as even though he knew that his actions were not going to affect the final results, as Wang Shen and Wang Ye was going to see Sima Zhao anyways, he still decided to stay. Seeing that they're unable to convince their stubborn colleague to save his own life, Wang Shen and Wang Ye immediately rode to Sima Zhao's estate. Now, Wang Shen was the nephew of Wang Chang, who was the former general who conquers the south in charge of the Jin province before becoming the Grand Excellency and then dying of old age the year prior in 259. And with their clan being the esteemed gentry Wang clan from Taiyuan, they never really had to commit to any political factions as their clan had always been favored by the imperial court since the late Han dynasty. So for the most part, they typically went with the flow, followed the winners, and stuck to the status quo, which is why, with Sima Zhao being much more powerful than the emperor, Wang Shen naturally chose the Sima clan, even though in the past he was closely associated with Cao Shuang. Emperor Cao Mao most likely decided to include Wang Shen in on his plan, largely because of this too, in addition to Wang Shen's display of loyalty to the Wei dynasty in his carefully written Book of Wei that kindly twisted a few facts in favor of the Cao clan as the court historian. But from the results, I think it's rather clear that Wang Shen basically had no personal loyalties and simply earned his political career through sucking up to whoever was in power at the time. Wang Ye, on the other hand, was not important enough to earn himself a chapter in the history books, so aside from his participation in this meeting, we know nothing about him, other than the fact that he was born in the Wulin Commandery down south. So after Wang Shen and Wang Ye met with Sima Zhao to inform him of Cao Mao's actions, Sima Zhao quickly summoned his trusted advisor, Jia Chong, who held the position of General of the Central Guards, to summon his troops and stop the emperor from leaving the imperial palace, as Sima Zhao did not want this to become a scene in public. However, by this time, Emperor Cao Mao had already left the Empress Dowager's palace after briefly informing her of his plans, as he was already marching his small army, consisting of some imperial palace guards and armed eunuchs, out of the imperial palace through the East Gate. Guarding the East Gate was Sima Zhao's younger brother, Sima Zhou, but when Emperor Cao Mao drew his sword out and led a charge against Sima Zhou and his gate guards, they hastily retreated, as no one dared to actually harm the emperor. But just as Cao Mao's band was leaving the imperial palace, Jia Chong and his troops arrived on scene as they tried to block Emperor Cao Mao's path. But once again, when Emperor Cao Mao declared that he was simply on his way to issue imperial punishment to traitors, and that all who stands in his way will get their clans executed as traitors too, Jia Chong's troops hesitated to fight back, especially as Cao Mao once again charged in himself atop of his imperial chariot, swinging his sword. With the situation getting out of hand, Jia Chong was approached by one of Cao Mao's personal guards in Chengji, who was secretly one of the many spies that Sima Zhao and Jia Chong had planted in the emperor's personal guards. And Chengji asked Jia Chong for instructions, as no one was sure what they should do in a situation like this. Jia Chong whispered back, telling Chengji that the Sima clan had raised you all precisely for a difficult moment like this, and that there was no need for questions and hesitation. Knowing what must be done, Chengji got behind the unsuspecting Emperor Cao Mao, and with one thrust of his ji, he pierced the young emperor's body, effectively killing him on the spot, before throwing his body out of the imperial chariot and onto the ground as everyone else froze in sheer shock of the situation. And to find out what happens next, as the death of an emperor in this manner has never happened before in Chinese history, please come back next time, as we'll see how Sima Zhao deals with the immense political backlash from the death of Emperor Cao Mao. So hopefully y'all have enjoyed this episode enough to consider subscribing to the channel for more content on Three Kingdoms history, or simply support the channel by leaving a comment below, or just by hitting the like button. And as always, I'll see you all next time. Bye!